I remember when this World Happiness Report came out this a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about the fact that, yes, Finland was at the top of the list yet again. I think that's 5 years in a row. But we spent a little bit of time trying to understand why Canada keeps falling on this list. This year, 25th. We'd been as high as 5 about 10 or 15 years ago. But then, you look at Finland and you look at all the Nordic countries who typically score right at the top of this list, right? Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Finland, as I said, 5 years in a row, number one. And then try to understand, the old story. What are they doing right that we're not? So there's a really interesting article in the Globe and Mail our next guest wrote, which I really enjoyed reading, by the way, all about having visited Finland to try to understand what that magic formula is that makes the Finns so happy. Shehzad Ali is a professor of public health and Canada Research Chair at Western University, and she is on the line. He is on the line. Thank you so much for being with us today. Listen, was the idea of taking the trip to Finland to simply study this? Was that the purpose of the trip?
Well, thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Aaron, for having me. I actually traveled for an academic conference and just happened to make some observations during my stay, and I took some notes and I decided to write this article. So, honestly, happiness was kind of at the back of my mind. The report comes out every year, and Finland, I think this is probably the 9th year in a row that this country has been in topping the list. So I was always intrigued, so I just used this opportunity to explore more.
I love some of the things you said. You said when you look at it, right, Finland should be a case study in seasonal depression. They only get 6 hours of daylight right in the middle of winter. But then you discovered something as early as your taxi ride when you landed. What was that?
So it's a fairly relatively introvert kind of a country. There are multiple sort of phenomena that I discovered were quite interesting. So one of them is what they call sisu, which is a level of resilience. They don't call it resilience. It's a level of quiet toughness, which is their ability to accept life on its face value. They don't really complain a lot. The weather is terrible. I mean, traveling from Canada, I can tell you that I have no plans of moving to Finland. But what's interesting is that they just accept life as it comes. And maybe one example that I can use, it's a relatively trivial example, which is about the weather. I asked them about their weather, and they said there is no such thing as bad weather. It's only bad clothing. So that just gives you a sense of, how they take life. The common expression is that there are things that you can't change, and you just have to accept and move on.
It's interesting. Some of the things in here are really quite interesting beyond, I love that as an expression. There's only bad clothing, not bad weather. You also discovered, I know how significant this is, half the country, right, are single family homes.
That's correct. And people are very content living by themselves and living in their own, with their own thoughts. And what I realized is that Finns don't really feel the need to fill quietness. They're very comfortable being quiet. I think this is a famous quote by Susan Cain, which I mentioned in my piece, that you can tell a Finn likes you if he's staring at your shoes instead of his own.
Yeah.
It's a state of being content. They're not really chasing excitement or fun. It is a fun country in many ways, but what they seem to be seeking is contentment and steadiness rather than a constant joy or excitement.
There's a great contrast here, and one of the things you write as well. You said they don't feel the need to constantly engage. You were talking to a shop assistant who said it would not be unusual to see couples, all sitting together for an hour and not even speaking.
And that is something that I found very unusual. So I grew up in South Asia, and in a place with a population density of a black hole, and you really, you couldn't escape people. And even now, I think most of us feel that if we're not surrounded by people, we reach for our phone or a different screen. But Finns are remarkably comfortable, and nature is a massive part of their life. But when you see them walking out and about, they don't have their headphones on. They just enjoy nature in its raw form, which is remarkable.
You also point something out. Again, there's so many little things in here that are really interesting. One of them is that they're actually happy with their government. They're happy with their government, right?
That is correct. But I should also sort of stress it's a very different country. I mean, it's a much smaller population. There's about 5.6 million people. It's the size of the country is 1/30th of the size of Canada. It's fairly socioeconomically, it's a very homogenous country, and they have a very strong tradition of social trust, and institutions sort of seem to work because this unspoken social contract seems to hold. I'll give you an example. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Now, I'll give you an example. So I traveled via Finnair. My flight was late by several hours, and I sent an email to Finnair, and Finnair is mostly owned by the state. Within 24 hours, I received a response from them, and in 48 hours, I had received compensation. And many of us who have taken Air Canada and other airlines, we have certainly have had very different experiences. So it's a very different country in that sense.
I'm going to run out of time. I just want you to touch on one other thing. I thought this was fascinating, which is the fact that, sauna, I think we all know this now, right, is an important part of their culture, so much so that you've decided to get your own?
That is correct, yes. I had to discuss a lot with my wife, but it's not a... But, I mean, there are lots of benefits, and, it's something to consider. It's not always practical, but, you can always go out in nature and enjoy the nature, which is another important part of their country. Yeah.
By the way, when you're in a sauna, do they sit and talk to each other in there, or that's pretty much solitary as well?
I don't think they do. They're very remarkably content with their own thoughts, which is remarkable.
Imagine that, content with your own thoughts. By the way, I like the story says this, the actual headline. In Finland, the secret to finding happiness is to not try. I thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Very much appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and if you want to read it, by the way, it's just really well done. All these little things in here that actually happen when you go. So it's in the Globe and Mail, and that's the headline. In Finland, the secret to finding happiness is to not try.
Experience Bruno Mars live in Toronto.
Guess who's back again?
iHeartRadio wants to send you and a friend with flights from tripcentral.ca. 2 nights at Sheraton Centre Toronto. Tickets to Bruno Mars and $1,000 cash.
Don't believe me, just watch.
Download the free iHeartRadio app. Listen to iHeart New Music for 10 minutes.
I'm coming to get you.
Win your way to Bruno Mars.
Will you be there? Oh, I just might.
Every day you listen is another chance to win.